We left off last video here, where I just added a lot of new textures, better trees, and a nice new atmosphere. If we take a step back now and look at the world, something really stands out to me, and that's what we're going to look at now. At ground level, the problem wasn't too obvious, but as I fly up, you really see the issue. All the biomes look like blobs. If you've done a bit of programming before, you might recognize these shapes, as these are the shapes you get when you use Perlin noise. The problem with this approach is although it looks fine up close, the overall structure of the world is boring. What I want is a planet that has continents, vast oceans, and biomes placed where they make sense. That way a player can know if they want to find a colder biome to head towards the poles, or a warmer biome to head towards the equator. Taking a look at the code, as we load a chunk, we step through every x and y coordinate, ignoring z. This lets us look at the world as a flat surface, greatly reducing the number of calculations we need to make. The voxel index and the chunk location is then used to convert to a world vector. Multiplying this by the planet's radius gives us a position in space we can use to sample some noise. For the biomes, I'm just sampling some simplex noise, which is faster to compute than Perlin noise, and using cutoff values to determine the biomes. That explains why the biomes look very blobby. Okay, so how do I make it better? One option to improve this could be to use different octaves of noise and add them together. This will break up the blobs into more interesting shapes, and is a technique I already use for the height map. With this method, we take different scales of Perlin noise and add them together. We start with 1 times and add that at half strength. We then double the sampling scale and add that at 1/4 strength. Double again and add that at 1/8 strength, and double again and add it at 1/16 strength. This already looks a lot better. If I then add a gradient map, we can see how the biomes would look. Definitely better. We have lost that bubbly look, but it's still not what I'm looking for, as it has no large scale structure, and I won't be able to make interesting continental planets with this technique. It seems that noise just won't cut it for this task. It's too local, and it doesn't understand the macro structure of a planet. We need a new algorithm that takes the whole planet into account. My next idea was to have a recursive algorithm that runs the first time a world is loaded, to create a map that can then be used during generation. The map's resolution should be per chunk, not per voxel, in order to keep the stored data manageable. And it should have continuous data like a noise function, so we don't get abrupt changes in the planet. Seeing as the planet is based on an icosahedron, I thought it was a good place to start, with each corner representing a data point. To that data, I randomly added land, with quite a low chance of inserting the land. The final step is to create a height map based on the land data. Here is a preview of it working. I have made a globe with a Mercator projection map, so I can quickly analyze the worlds. We can see here that we're getting one large landmass, and there is no detail, but it does look promising, as we now have a continent and an ocean. You may also notice the pentagon. This might surprise you, as I said it's an icosahedron before, which is made of triangles. However, I'm using the corners of an icosahedron, and if you map which corner you are closest to when coloring the globe, you get its dual shape back, the dodecahedron. The 12 corner shapes of an icosahedron turn into the 12 pentagonal faces of the dodecahedron. These two shapes are really the same in my mind. Time to add some more detail. First step is to subdivide the icosahedron. This means we take all the current edges, split them in half, and add the edge centers as new corners. This piece of code calculates the midpoint between two corners of an edge. It then works out if it should be land or sea. If both parent corners are sea, it's sea. If both are land, it's land. but if there is one of each, it flips a coin. After that, I designed this fill land function, which will create land if most of its neighboring tiles are also land. It uses a random element, but the more land tiles surrounding a C tile, the more likely it is to convert that C tile into a new land tile. Its goal is to warp the shape of the land masses to make them more interesting. The last step was to spawn some more land randomly. Again, this was a low chance, but this will give us more points to grow into large continents or islands. Taking a look again at the preview, you can see that the starting continents have grown, and there are some smaller continents that have just started. Definitely a step in the right direction, but it needs a lot more detail. To add detail, I have written a recursive function so we can repeat this process many times and hopefully grow an interesting planet. I have created a for loop which will run with as many subdivisions as you want. This subdivision numbers can be later used to align the data roughly with the size of the world the player generates. The first step is to subdivide the data. Then we are filling in land again and finally adding more new land. This looks the same, but as I increase the subdivisions, you can see how the world gets more and more detailed. Another improvement, but we now seem to have an issue where the world is splattered with small islands. This is coming from the addLand function. Perhaps we need to stop that function early so it doesn't create small islands towards the end of the process. I have added this condition so it will not run the addLand function after the first 3 subdivisions. I'm going to step through the subdivisions again, starting at 3 subdivisions. We're at 4 now, and we shouldn't get any more small islands. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is immediately a lot better, but something really weird is happening. Where is all this extra water coming from? This shouldn't be possible. Let's take a look back at the code. Can you see it? It's a subtle one, but the land count ternary operator is missing some brackets. Instead of the ternaries being added together to give a value of 2, this function will at most give 1, meaning that when we subdivide an edge with a land at each corner, instead of the new corner being guaranteed to be land, it's a 50-50 instead. Now that's fixed, let's have a look again at the preview. It looks to be working great now. We have a believable looking planet. Still some small issues at a glance. The islands seem to be quite uniform in shape and size. Also, I'd like to expose more variables so I can play with the settings. Here are the changes I have made. I have increased the number of subdivisions which will add new islands. This will hopefully give us a larger range of island sizes. I've added some variables, the creation factor, which will scale how much land is added at the beginning, growth weight, which changes the odds that a new corner is land when its parent corners are one of each, and island factor, which will scale the number of new islands that get added. There is also a growth factor, which scales how aggressive the fill land function is, and a new remove puddles function, which just tidies up any C tiles that are surrounded by 6 land tiles. Here it is all put together, with all the new variables as sliders. The islands all look unique now, and a lot less uniform. As I change the sliders, we can vary how much of the world is ocean by pulling the different levers. This also changes how erratic the shape of the continents are as we erode and fill them by different amounts. Perhaps we need to smooth them slightly in the future, but I think it's good enough for now. Remember, this is only a map that will get used to guide generation and is not the actual generation itself. The in-game generation will naturally provide a bit of smoothing anyway. I can already tell that not only will this be great for Earth-like worlds, but playing with these settings here should help us make cool alien planets in the future. But we are not done yet. We only have information for what's land and what's sea. We now need to work out the terrain and the biomes. As I stated earlier, I want the biomes to make sense. I want warmer biomes to be at the equator and colder biomes to be at the poles. Also, I want to take humidity into account. I want places surrounded by sea to be wetter biomes and places far away from the coast to be drier biomes. First step is to take that land data and turn it into a distance map so we can know how far everything is from the coast. I used an A*-like algorithm to calculate this. I made two ways to view this data, either like this distance map or this weird looking contour map which connects all the places with the same distance from the coast. This script calculates the planet's temperature. Currently it's very basic, but its simple approximations should be enough to give us a believable planet. Its first step is to calculate the latitude temperature. It then factors in a sea temperature using the distance from the coast map, which is called depth here. The sea factor cools warmer latitudes and warms colder ones, trying to approximate the ocean's effect here on Earth. So it's not uniform, a little bit of noise that was calculated earlier for performance reasons is added in to give the final temperature for the region. This new temperature map is then used to help calculate the planet's humidity, along with the depth map. The sea adds humidity for places near the coast, which will be wetter, while extreme cold and warmth will have a drying effect. Also, a bit of noise is added to make the humidity map less uniform. We also need to generate a macro terrain map, which can inform our generation algorithm what type of terrain it should be generating. This script takes a bunch of noise inputs along with the depth map. If the depth is positive, this means we're on land, and it runs the land function. It's quite simple, it just decides if it's a beach or a cliff coastline, and further inland, it uses noise to decide whether it's flat land, hills, or mountainous. For the ocean, it just needs to work out if it's coastal, shallow seas, normal sea, or deep ocean. The final step is to take all the temperature, humidity, and terrain maps, along with a little bit of noise, to calculate the biomes. All we need to do here is look at those maps and decide the conditions needed for each biome to be selected. The good thing here is that if later we want to add more biomes or tweak a biome spawn rate, it will be relatively easy to change. So here is it all put together. I will select the temperature map so we can inspect that first. It looks good at a glance. You can see it's cold near the poles and hotter at the equator, with a nice temperate region in between. Switching now to the humidity map, you can see that the cold poles, especially the northern pole with the large landmass, are quite dry, along with some drier regions near the equator. I purposefully kept noise quite high here, as I wanted it to be random enough that you can get dry coastal biomes or wet biomes near the equator, just that they are less likely. Here is the terrain map. The deep ocean is a darker blue, shallow seas are light blue, beaches are yellow and hard to see at this scale, grey is the mountains, and light green the flatlands, while the darker green are the hills. Finally, here is all the data put together into a biome map. I'm really pleased with how it has all turned out. It looks like a believable planet. Those blobs we saw at the start of the video are long gone, and this makes me really excited to start exploring some of these worlds. But hold on, the job is only half done now. We have these awesome maps which we can generate when a player first loads a world, but currently no way to use them. That is a big task, so I'm going to leave that for the next video. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps and I will have an announcement once we hit 10k. Remember to add PlanetSmith to your Steam wishlist. This helps a ton and is one of the most important things you can do to help the game. Links are in the description. Also, if you just can't wait to the next video, you can join our Discord. This is the best place to ask me questions or send me your suggestions. I have also added members here on YouTube, so if you want to support the game directly and get slightly early access to the next video, you can. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.